Hi, I'm Lisa Fichte. I'm the Director of Continuing Education for the University at Buffalo School of Social Work. I'm very pleased to have as our guest today Mike Langlois, who is a licensed clinical social worker in several states. He works in private practice, in teaching and consulting, and specializes in technology and social work practice. So welcome, Mike. What we wanted to talk about today was the all-important topic of self-care. But we're going to combine it with the issue of self-care and its relationship to technology, because that's something that people are not familiar with. It's new ground and they sometimes don't know what to do. But we all know there's a huge issue with burnout and vicarious traumatization and the high need for self-care among human service professionals, social workers, clinicians, especially those working with trauma survivors. But technology brings a new element. You know, we've got our smartphones, and now they connect us to the internet, they connect us to Facebook, to Twitter, to games, all kinds of things. And it's that, when do we turn it off? Our email, you know, people have their phones sometimes set, and every time there's an email or a Facebook notification, it's signaling them. And they're on 24 hours a day. And we wanted to capture in this video some understanding of the relationship between a person and technology and how to bring that into the realm of self-care and set boundaries. And I think also deal with the issue of guilt. I think when you know that you can be connected to work, particularly 24 hours a day, sometimes there's guilt about, oh, well, I could check that email. I could respond to that customer. And even if we set boundaries, there's a guilt element for those of us brought up, particularly with that kind of family culture. So I don't know, maybe can we start with talking about what has the technology of smartphones and being able to be connected 24 hours a day done to people's self-care practices? Does that seem like a good place to start?
Sure. Well, first off, I think one of the things I often talk about is how technology amplifies things. It amplifies feelings, it amplifies conflict, it can amplify feelings of support, for example. And in terms of self-care, technology can often be used to really enhance self-care by the rise of these communities online, whether it be Facebook or group supports. You can go to an AA meeting online at any time of the day or night. So there's a lot of ways that technology can actually support our self-care. But I think where the boundaries come in, and I think where you were talking about the guilt, is that technology can amplify whatever pre-existing feelings or conflicts around guilt we might have and responsibility to others. So for example, back before we had the internet and technology in this way, a lot of clinicians were protected inadvertently because they wouldn't work in communities that they lived in necessarily, or wouldn't live in the communities they worked in. And they'd have I know a lot of female clinicians would keep their maiden name for work, and then their married name would be sort of a way that they protected their privacy. Or people would have their addresses off the roster. And technology has really collapsed that natural geographic boundary. Our clients, I actually have a psychiatrist friend that we were talking the other day, and he was really worried about giving me his email. He says, nobody can have this. And I think that speaks to this wanting to hold on to that vestige of the way things used to be, that privacy as we know it is shifting, that access to information is shifting. Like you said, we have smartphones all the time. And so technology never tells us how to use it. That's really for us to figure out. And so the question then becomes, now that I have this 24/7 access to information and communication, how do I start to improve my boundaries with it? How do I start to work through whatever that feeling of guilt is? And there are some ways you can do this with technology to help you, but ultimately I think it's something in many cases to go back to your supervisor and sort of talk with them about. So for example, my email has an autoresponder so that anytime a patient or anyone sends me an email, they automatically get a response that says, I got your email. Don't wait for my reply. If this is an emergency, this is the resource you need to go to. That allows me to know that I've closed the loop and done the sort of due diligence for my professional piece. Now, whether or not I check my email at 4 in the morning is an inside job. You know, if I'm compelled to do that, that's not because of the technology and it's not because of my professional obligation. That's an inside job. So I think one of the ways I try to talk with people about it is to recognize what is the technology and what's the inside job.
You're saying people need to be very self-reflective and self-aware of why they're going for their phone or going for their iPad, and what they're doing and what it's doing to their feelings, and what made them make that choice. Is it worrying that there are going to be 300 emails in the morning at work, and they want to reduce their stress by getting rid of some of them? Or is it worrying about, for those people who allow clients to have their email for different purposes, worrying about a client? Or is it self-soothing? When does it cross over for people who are struggling with that self-care and boundaries? When does it cross over into something that they're having a little difficulty setting boundaries? I mean, how do you help people identify when they're simply not thinking about it and not setting a boundary, and when they're really having some difficulty setting a boundary? Does that make sense?
It does. And again, I think the concept of supervision is going to come up a couple times when we talk about this, because I think part of what we're talking about is not just self-care, but professional identity. What kind of therapist do you want to be? Because there is a range. I'm more rigid as a therapist. I work as an outpatient therapist. I'm in private practice, which means that I work from the hours my office is open till the hours it's closed. And if there's a crisis, what that means is the patient and I are going to be in touch for 10 to 15 minutes in order to assess whether they need to go to the ER. I'm very clear and very rigid about those things. Other than that, it's going to wait till the next day because I'm not working when I'm not working. And if somebody is having difficulties because they're having intrusive thoughts about a particular person or a particular case, then that needs to sort of be explored in a sort of a supervisory sort of relationship. Why is this coming up right now? The technology becomes another vehicle for it. But again, it's not as much the technology as self-care is an inside job in a lot of ways.
So for a clinician going to their supervisor, it might be speaking to, why is this coming up? They're having a lot of anxiety perhaps about their skills in working with a particular client, and they're worrying about that. We're also going to have people watching this video who are not therapists. They're human service professionals, administrators, case managers, and so their boundaries and self-care with technology can become different. It's not clients, necessarily. It could be everybody in the world related to work, and it could be their personal email, and it could be notifications of everything you put on your phone seems to want to give you a notification that something has happened.
Well, you can turn those off, and there are a lot of ways you can turn off the notification settings. I think what's interesting, though, is also folks that are case managers or not necessarily folks that are doing primarily clinical work. The questions then become, are the people that are emailing you, if they're clients, are they under-resourced that they're calling you at different times and in different situations? Do we need to network more resources for a particular client? Do they have access to the 24-hour care or 24-hour resources that are often available. So that sometimes it can be as simple as helping case managers understand, well, where are the 24-hour resources that can be tracked to, or these folks can know that they can call. If there is no 24/7 hour resource, well, then we're heading towards a macro level where we need to figure out how we get those resources. But if there are, it then again becomes the inside job, which is I gave the correct resources, so this doesn't need to be dealt with today. How do I cultivate in myself a sense of this doesn't need to be dealt with right now? And I guess the last thing that maybe we can ask ourselves is, am I confusing worry with effort?
Okay.
Am I confusing worrying or fretting about something, or maybe emailing, 2 hours earlier than I need to, with more effort in some ways? Does this email need to be answered at 3 in the morning, or can it wait till 9 in the morning?
Right. And that's an important point. I think the other thing, coming from a non-clinical background, everybody doesn't have a supervisor to discuss this with and to support them about. So sometimes people feel they're very alone. And what you see, you're in the grocery store, you're everywhere in the community, people are constantly on their phones in the lines, they're in the doctor's office talking on their phones, and what we're being bombarded with is a lack of boundaries by the world, I think, in many cases. And we were talking earlier in preparation for this about mindfulness and being mindful in the use of technology, and just instead of that grabbing the phone in the grocery store line, how does a person become mindful about that process of whether they're going to use their phone in the grocery store line, whether it's for Facebook or for their email? How does someone think about that?
Well, I think you can take some time to reflect on that intentionally, that you can structure yourself and say, I want to make some decisions about my smartphone. So for example, do I want to be accessing Facebook at all times of the day or night? If the answer is no, maybe I don't want the Facebook app on my smartphone. I don't have to have that app on there.
Right.
Do I want to have my smartphone on at all times, or do I want to shut it off when I'm not using it? Because it may be that having an extra couple of minutes or seconds for it to power up or power down makes us go, I don't really need to do this right now. So again, I don't want to sort of imply that the technology is a toxic substance. I want people to understand that they have choices, and that mindfulness in some ways is partly to open up a little space between when I see something and when I act. And if there's and if I can't do that right in the moment, maybe I want to do some prep at other times, when I'm, at night when I'm making, after I've had dinner, I'm making a plan about, well, do I really want to have so much access to technology?
Yeah. And I think that that's an important point about, not to perceive technology as toxic, because it does so many things to help us. And the smartphone, the iPad make my life so much easier, and yet I will have people be like, how can it make your life easier? Look at all those apps. Right. And it's like, well, it makes my life easier. I don't have to get up and walk to the upstairs computer. I don't have to log in. It already has my login. I can access information that I need personally or professionally much more rapidly. But the decision making, it does increase the numbers of decisions I feel I have to make.
Yes.
And that's tiring. And you made an important point earlier, because everybody doesn't always know how to use their smartphones, and sometimes the joke is they have to get their kids to teach them how to use it, how to take care of the settings. So some people don't even realize they can turn off their notifications. And the other thing is you can have, if you have to keep it on, as many of us do because of family issues, you can set certain tones for family, so that when you hear a tone of a notification of a phone call or a text and it's not them, you don't answer. So I think to summarize, if I'm hearing everything correctly, it's making mindful decisions about what do I need to access at different times, and then sticking with those decisions. And if you're struggling with, I'm feeling guilty, or I'm feeling I'm not perfect enough because I'm not on 24/7, seeking out supervision, whether it's from your clinical supervisor or whether it's perhaps seeing a therapist yourself to help you begin to manage those boundaries in a more comfortable way. But we're definitely, we don't want people having this kind of technology increasing their burnout rates.
And it doesn't have to.
Right.
And I think that the other thing maybe people can think about, and social workers are usually trained to think about the differences between tweaking the existing system and fundamentally changing to a different system. And the application to technology, for example, the smartphone, is, are there things I can tweak about the smartphone, such as settings or different people's having different IDs, so that the system is the same, but it's adjusted and that's enough for me to feel comfortable? Or do I want to fundamentally change things? And I don't want to say one is better than the other, but a fundamental change would be being able to say, hey, look, human beings as a species managed to survive for thousands of years without having 24/7 access to everybody. People have managed to have families that survived and nobody died if we couldn't get in touch with them within 5 minutes. I can turn the phone off. I'm not saying that's the best one, but what I'm saying is people have choices. They can either radically change things and say to friends, you know what, I'm trying for a couple of days to not have my phone on, see what happens. Or they can tweak it.
We also have one therapist who announces on Facebook she does technology breaks at certain times of the year. And she will say, I think it's 3 days. She tends to do it for 3 days. Be aware, I am on a total break from all technology. And she said that's really important for her self-care. For some people, that needs to happen every day or every weekend. I think, there's other tricks, in addition, putting your cell phone in the back of your car when you're driving, and so that you're not distracted, and the instant messaging, and I don't even know how that works, but
Well, it's interesting. One thing I would say is that there's such a proliferation of different technologies that are all simultaneously available on the smartphone.
Right.
Suddenly you can video, you can take pictures, you can do emails, you can call on the phone, you can text, and it's all on this one little thing. That doesn't mean you need to use all those features. That people often are surprised when because I'm the technology guy, I'm not a big texter. I don't text with patients. I barely text with my immediate family, and only when I'm traveling and on emergencies. So I've made a conscious decision that that's one technology I don't want to spend more time on. Now, email, I check my email a lot. I've made a conscious decision. I'm more interested in spending my consciousness time on email than on texting. So perhaps the other thing people can do to self-care is evaluate all these different modes of communication and then ask yourself, which ones can I let go of? Which ones do I want to really focus on? There are literally dozens and dozens, perhaps hundreds of social media platforms. I don't think you should be on every single one of them. Figure out which ones give you the most. And then also pay attention to which things tend to make you feel drained. Because, it's interesting. I think we've all had this experience with people, that there are some people that when you spend time with them, you feel a lot more energized and optimistic. And then there are other people where you feel kind of more drained. A large portion of the time, you have choice about how much time you spend with most of those people. I think you can start understanding technology as a medium to accessing relationships. And, are there ones that you feel like you want to distance yourself a little bit from?
I think that's helpful to keep that technology, smartphones, iPad just framed in that we have choices, how we use it, what we use it for, and it's no different than anything else in our lives. We have choices with who we spend time with, and that includes what's on our phone and how it communicates to us and how we have relationships with people through it. So I thank you so much for this important topic on self-care and and the new role of technology in that. So thank you, Mike.
Thanks.